This is how you make your green screen slap. I'm gonna do one more. Full disclaimer before we get started, this is not an editing tutorial. We're going to be talking about the practicalities of setting up your green screen and trying to get as clean a key as possible. You will need one chroma background, green, blue, whatever takes your fancy. You will need at least 2 lights. You'll need a camera, higher resolution the better, and some editing software. Premiere, Final Cut, or if you have nothing else, DaVinci Resolve to a free version. This has chroma abilities built into it. So, let's talk green screens. Well, you've got a few different options. First option is the cheap, crappy ones you can get on eBay. Now, these are shit, but in all honesty, they crease like crazy, and that's just going to make your job harder when you get to post-production. The other option, if you go for a fabric one, is something like a felt. They're a little bit heavier, so they don't crease as easily, so you're going to get a nice flatter background. But if you have a little bit of a budget, ignore these first 2 options because the best way to go is vinyl. The vinyl is a matte finish. It also comes in much bigger sizes if that's required. It's reversible, so you've got a white background on the back, and as well as all this, it's easy to clean. Stuff just wipes straight off. Right, this brings us on to lights. Now, you're going to want at least 2 lights, like we said. At the very minimum, you're going to be using 1 light for the background and 1 light for the subject. Our personal recommendation is to use at least 2 lights to cover the background to try and get it as flat as possible and as evenly lit as possible, which is basically the same thing. I don't know why I said that twice. And a quick note before we get started, we recommend that you diffuse any of the lighting options we're about to mention because it's going to make the light softer and more even on your background. If you are strapped for cash and you need a basic lighting kit, you can opt for can lights. These are probably the most basic lights you're going to find. They offer you a single point of light that's unfocused and just uses normal household bulbs. The next option would be some lower end LED lights like these Yongnuo ones that we use here. There are several different benefits to LED lights, but the main ones are that most of them are dimmable at the very least. Some are bi-color, so you can change between daylight and tungsten, and if you're really lucky, you'll find a decent RGB light that will give you the full spectrum of color within reason. Next up would be your higher end LED lights. These can range from anything like arcane TV lights all the way up to something that's industry standard like a sky panel. These lights are going to give you really consistent color with a decent CRI that should be over 95, which means when you're using multiple lights, you won't see any color shift from lamp to lamp. Still recording, cool. Again, the same as with the green screens themselves, the amount that you pay for your lights will dictate the quality and how well you're able to key out your subject in a basic green screen setup like we're going to go through now. Obviously, you're going to need something to put all these things up, so you can opt for light stands or light stands. For the green screen itself, you can either use 2 light stands with a pole connecting them, or you can get some cheap backdrop stands off of places like eBay. And remember, if you're using heavy lights and stands, whack a sandbag on that bad boy. Now, what you're going to want to do is read the script before we start talking. Set your 2 lights up, one either side at 45 degrees to the green screen, and using trial and error, you're going to be trying to get the light in the green screen as flat as possible. If you have the option, a good way to judge this is using false color on your camera. If you don't have this built onto your camera, you can use an external monitor, or if you're old school, you can whip out your light meter and do it that way. A good place to start with your background's exposure is around 60 IRE. Once you've got your green screen looking good, we're going to be moving on to your subject. Now, you're going to want to try and place your subject as far forward as possible to try and create as much separation between them and the green screen behind them. Then, you can go to town lighting them however you like, whether it's a single light, 2 lights, no lights. Then you can go to town lighting your subject to try and match your scene. Another thing you can add into your lighting setup as well, if you so desire, is a rim light or a backlight, just to give even more separation between subject and background. It's good to know what you're going to be putting behind your subject when you're shooting, so you can try and match the lighting as closely as possible. Pay attention to things like shadows, the angle of the light, and how hard that source of light is. All the while you're doing this, you should be looking out for any shadows or light that's leaking onto the background. If you don't notice this when you're filming, it's only going to bite you in the arse when you come to edit. A few things to be aware of whilst you're filming are the boundaries. Most importantly, you want to make sure that the subject isn't going to be crossing over the edge of the green screen. It's good to get them to just wave their arms around a little bit before you get filming, just so you've got an idea. Mic placement is very important. You want to make sure it's up high and it's not going to cast any shadows, or alternatively, you can use a lav mic if you prefer. On the technical side of things, the codec that you're recording to will affect the ability to key it in post. The higher the bit depth and bit rate, the better chance you're going to have of getting a clean key. This is just because there's more information in the image, and that is the reason. It's also good to have a slightly slower aperture to make sure you get sharp edges, and if you use a shutter speed a little bit higher than usual, that'll also clean up any motion blur, which could also cause you some problems. Then, the key. Get that eyedropper, bitch. Open up your editor of choice. We named a few at the beginning, so you can use any of those, but we prefer to use Premiere Pro. Search for the key in your effects panel and drop that onto your clip, and then you should just be able to pop that eyedropper over your green, and voila. Depending on your editor, you'll get varying degrees of control over the edge of your key, but if you followed all of our steps correctly, which I expect you have done, you shouldn't have to do much work to get it spot on, to get it slapping. Well, I hope you found this video useful. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz, and we'll see you again soon. And be sure to keep your eyes peeled, because we're going to do a new video soon that shows you how to key in Premiere Pro. Until then. And on our last point, you want to make sure you're wearing green head to toe.